Hello, hello, hello. We are live today. Hello, this is Irene with SaugaTalks, and we're here with Brian Thomas from Coruzant. We're holding our Friday Tech Talks every Friday, except last week, which was very disappointing, but we're back today. So thank you for joining and watching replay, watching us live, because every week we bring fantastic guests. Brian, how are you this week?
I'm doing fantastic, and happy Friday to you and everybody that's tuning in. And back to your show last week. It was canceled unexpectedly. Obviously, we had some technical difficulties. But since we're going to talk about 5G today, maybe 5G is kind of the solution or backup to the ISP interruption we had that actually canceled our show last week. So that's something we could certainly talk about. But doing great. I might kick it back over to you, Irene.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, it was quite embarrassing last week because we talk about tech innovations, and yet simple cable operator kind of kills your internet right there, and that's kind of stops all the operations. So where's Elon Musk when we need him? So we're back. We're back this week, and our guest is tremendous. It's Imtiaz Adam. Imtiaz, how are you this Friday?
I'm good, thank you, and a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Lovely, appreciate so much because it's your Friday evening. So absolutely, yeah. Let's not waste any time, Imtiaz, because I do want to talk to you about, right, what to expect from AI in 2022, because you are absolutely the right person to hear what's new in research, what's new in industries, what's new in adoption. Can we call 2022 finally the year of adoption? What do you think?
Well, I think that's a great point, Irene. What is going to happen going forwards is we're going to see AI start to scale across the economy, across the different sectors. Right now, the hard reality is that AI is dominant in areas such as e-commerce and social media, in all honesty, where there is a huge amount of data availability. A lot of the AI revolution has been occurring around social media platforms as 4G enabled mobile apps in that space, and they have the majority of the data, and of course e-commerce. It's no accident that the strongest AI teams in the world today in industry tend to be at the likes of Google, Facebook, and ByteDance, who own TikTok, and Amazon, Alibaba, etc. However, as we move into this, what I like to say, post-COVID world, being a bit optimistic, fingers crossed, that as the world is going increasingly digital transformation is accelerating, and we're going to see AI come into the other sectors of the economy, such as healthcare, so increasingly in finance, increasingly in education and manufacturing, etc. And there, AI is going to be more and more on the edge. What do we mean by the edge? The edge of the network. Because right now, the cloud is dominated. That's where the intelligence is right now. Not on the devices around us. But this world we're going into, especially 2022 to 2025, we're going to see a rapid growth in the edge of the network, with intelligence and AI being on the edge of the network, closer to where the data is generated. And that means that we're going to have near real-time responses. So we can have near real-time interactions with customers, in areas like marketing, but also fundamentally in terms of things like autonomous cars, robots, including healthcare robots. You're going to have near real-time interactions. You can't wait for an autonomous car or a healthcare robot to have a remote signal coming back from a cloud server that's remote and a long way away. The signal may either get interrupted, or it may have a lot of latency, may never reach, and the wrong thing will happen. An accident will happen. Also, all that traffic going backwards and forwards as the IoT scales is not efficient either. The other big game changer is that as latency goes down, latency being the gap between your device and responses from, say, a server and your front end, is that technologies such as augmented reality and virtual reality that struggle with 4G because the latency will start to work. So a couple of years from now, we could be wearing 5G-enabled smart glasses and seeing each other's holograms, and have neural translation with AI. So somebody could be speaking Russian to me, and I'd hear them in English, and vice versa, even though I don't speak Russian. So that is the world we're going to. Very exciting possibilities, holographic technology, and huge, endless opportunities. I'll let you go to the next question.
Yeah, that's great, Irene. I love that. And so, we started out, Imtiaz, about, adoption and where's that going. So I recently spoke with a guest just a few months back in Orsa. He runs a company that is deploying 5G at much faster scale. That's where his sweet spot is in his business. And so he's helping really deploy 5G in the large cities here in the US and beyond. So I think the adoption is going to be the easy part. Can we keep up with that? That's the big thing that I've always wondered about.
Yeah, sure. Great point, Brian, which is that the 5G infrastructure has been a challenge. The reality is that the likes of China and indeed South Korea have been taking a lead there. And obviously there was the challenges, political or whatever we want to call it, or security related, that the likes of the US and the UK had vis-a-vis Huawei. And that's led to a situation in the UK and the US and other countries where the Huawei equipment, 5G related equipment, is being removed from the networks and new equipment being put in. And I think having the coronavirus pandemic on top of that has meant that we've probably seen a 1 to 2 year delay, perhaps, in that 5G infrastructure because of these various issues. And 5G will be is a very technical system in the sense that you're probably aware there are 3 types of 5G. To make it very simplistic, you've got the long range, the mid range, and the ultra fast, very shortwave one. Now, the ultra fast one, which is probably going to be more in the cities because it doesn't reach very far and it would struggle to go through walls, even leaves and raindrops can impact it, which means you need a very high density of transmitters. And that would be very expensive as you go to outside of cities to make that density for a smaller population or a more dispersed population. So 5G has a number of intricate complexities, and it does require a large amount of investment. But then obviously we've seen the announcement from the US from President Biden on infrastructure investment, which isn't just traditional infrastructure, but other things on top. So maybe this is going to be an opportunity for the US to really forge forwards and play, become a global leader again in technology, which the US has been for a long time and in many ways still is.
Yes, many to come. Yes, many innovations to come. So with some of the guests here, Imtiaz, we spoke about voice and sound intelligence. Okay, that's something exciting to look forward to. So what do you see happening there on the research part as well as industry?
So thank you, Irene, for that question. I think, we've at times, I think we hyped, people in the industry have hyped things like voice and chatbots and, assistants a bit too much and made expectations too high because the experiences over the last 2 or 3 years weren't that great, to be very honest. And a lot of the time you go on and it doesn't recognize your zip code, struggles with accents, etc. And I think, and to be honest, no machine really is at the stage of the Turing test or passing that, even though some claim they have. So we're in the world of narrow AI, where AI can do specific tasks and sometimes do them very well, but not at the point of general intelligence, where you can have like a Jarvis that is going to, from Iron Man, that is going to understand everything, all nuances, and engage with you in a funny way with common sense as well. However, the rise of transformer technology that we've talked about before, like GPT3 as a transformer, has witnessed a step change in language, in text, and the way that NLP, natural language processing, is performed. And these transformer models are going from strength to strength, and we're seeing strong advances there, which are playing out in the area of natural language and neural translation and language in general. And perhaps there are also experiments going on. I have to admit, my team, we've been doing some of them as well, where we look at bringing in knowledge bases, ontologies, etc., and combining that with deep learning. So that's hybrid AI, and that starts to give greater elements of causality or causal reasoning to an extent, and therefore gives more, if you like, common sense approaches to the AI. So I see that being an area of a lot of active research and exciting developments over the next 2 to 3 years, and continued improvements in voice technology.
That's awesome. There's so much going on now. There was a big push the last several years, still is, to the cloud, but edge computing is where it's at now. They're talking about, gosh, you just mentioned some of that, Imtiaz. So I appreciate that. And here's the question. I know that some scientists and some engineers are already working on 6G. And there's some countries that are actually doing some great work with that now. Do you think we'll ever hit capacity with 5G? Because they're saying 6G is probably 8 to 10 years away.
Yeah, no, indeed. The expectations of the research, the early preliminary research suggests that we could be switching to 6G around 2030. 2028 would be the optimistic ones, but perhaps more realistically 2030-ish. And it's hard to even imagine when we go to with 6G, the speeds will be so phenomenal. And maybe that's the point where technologies such as neural interfaces, brain-computer interfaces, would really start to take off properly with things like 6G. But if we come back to 5G, I think a key thing there is the step change that's going to happen with edge computing, Brian, that you alluded to, is the fact that we're going to see an astronomic growth in connected devices. Now, there's a wide range of forecasts. Some say that by 2025, we'll have 40 to 50 billion connected devices. Statista had an older forecast that said by 2025, there'd be 75 billion connected devices, internet connected. So, if you go with 75, that's an average of 8 to 9 per person on the planet, right? It's huge. And even with the lower number of 40 to 50, it's still running at about 6 to 7 internet connected devices per person on the planet. That's massive. And the amount of data that's going to get generated. So you've got people at IDC who forecast that by 2025, there'll be 175 zettabytes of data. So we think we're in big data right now. And I don't have the statistic that 90% of data generated in human history came in the last 2 years. But when you look at the IDC curve, it's like rocketing up exponentially going forwards. So huge amounts of data, which is why we're going to need machine learning, why we need AI to make sense of that data. It's too big for an army of humans. And therefore, we're going to have to, and the other thing about IDC forecast is, if I recall correctly, was about approximately 30% of that data by 2025 is going to link to real-time data production. So that's why the edge is going to be so key. So analytics on the edge will be of great importance. And the use cases are very exciting. Remote medicine, in the future, 5 years plus, I should say, because healthcare tends to be a bit conservative, small c, a bit cautious to make sure the things are safe, etc. But you can have more and more medicine, perhaps. When I say medicine, including preventative healthcare and checks, etc., being done at your home rather than go to the hospital for everything. That's the kind of world we're going to. And perhaps you can then get earlier interventions, because you can start to detect something's going wrong before it's too bad. And then you have to have a major procedure that's very costly, because the healthcare systems, not just in the US, but pretty much everywhere all over the world, are at breakpoint, in all honesty, and COVID's really pushed them to the brink. So healthcare is increasingly very costly, yet disease is more and more complex. So, and we've got an aging population in the likes of the UK and the US, Japan and Europe. But then in the developing, emerging world, we have a very fast-growing young population, but they don't. So you've got different challenges there as well, but they don't have enough physicians or medics overall. And so, again, with remote medicine, we can start to, you can have access to greater access to healthcare specialists. And a good example is an example from China in 2019, where a brain surgeon using 5G conducted remote brain surgery successfully 3,000 kilometers away. That's almost 2,000 miles away. And a Parkinson's disease patient. Imagine that, right? So you could be in New York and you could have a surgeon in LA, real time, more or less. It's phenomenal, right? The kind of world we're going to.
Absolutely amazing. So, and yet, companies struggling with day-to-day implementations. I hear that AI now can structure unstructured data. Have you heard of this, Imtiaz?
Yeah, so when you think about it, a lot of your data is often unstructured in companies. Again, it could link to images, it could link to text, etc. And their deep learning techniques can be very successfully applied. But if we take it a step back, going back to your point, you're right that on the one hand, we can get very excited about where we're going to, but what there is, if you like, a digestion problem, maybe an implementation problem, especially with companies that are not technology companies. So Gartner have a statistic from a couple of years ago, I believe, that 87% machine learning projects or data science projects disappoint or struggle, fail, if you like. Others say it's as high as 92%. And I think the problem is culture, organization, and the data science team and the business team understanding each other. Because the data science team can make very technical things, but it may not solve a business problem. And the business team don't understand data science. And I think it's some magic AI that's, Wizard of Oz going to come out and just solve everything, right? Wave the magic wand. There's iRobot, it's going to do everything, Skynet or something. But in actual fact, you have to have a very clearly defined goal. You have to know what data you have available. That data is actually quality data, what pre-processing needs in there is needed, rather, how you're capturing it, and your data infrastructure, your data engineering, and then and as I said, clarity of your use case. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to increase revenues and like targeted marketing? Is that what you want to go and do with it, or is it something on your operations side or your back office whereby you're trying to find synergies and cost reductions? Or something, if you're a manufacturing company, maybe you're looking at unplanned outages in your machines, right? And trying to prevent those from happening. So what are you actually trying to do with your AI or data science project? What is the objective? What data have you got? What resources have you got? How are you going to successfully implement it? And importantly, champion it from the C team, including the CEO. Because too often, companies view technology, especially including AI, as a cost base. But if you go to a Google or a Facebook, etc., for them, technology, including AI, is a revenue generator, right? They approach it in a different way. So the legacy companies, if they want to successfully adopt AI, data science in general, they have to change the mindset. Culture is very hard to change. So it's alien territory often for them. And if it's not championed at the C level and given the support it needs and the proper planning, then unfortunately, the risks are high that it's going to go wrong. And also start with something that's easier to hit. Don't necessarily start with a complex deep reinforcement learning problem that to emulate DeepMind when you're new to AI, right? You're going to something very complicated that you're going to have to deal with exploration versus exploitation and sparse rewards and all kinds of complex things. Start with something simple, easy to achieve, KISS. Keep it simple, straightforward. Get the goal, learn from it, get the buy-in from the business team, show them the rewards, get the data science team to work closely with the business team and understand each other, learn a common language and how they can solve the problems, because it's all about solving problems, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much that is converging right now as far as emerging technology. And do you think it'll be harder or easier to set standards? We talked about just a good point here. We talked about 100. You mentioned 175 zettabytes, right? And we're talking about big data, right? Here coming in the near future. We had a guest on the show recently, Will Hayes, who talked about storage is going to be so different, and the way search is, and we're talking big data here. It just blows my mind. But a lot of these technologies are going to have to come together. These companies, technologies, platforms to come together to try and solve some of the problems. Because I think traditionally we've had technologies. Again, it's a software, hardware step on, right? So it's. I know quantum computing is right around the corner, so maybe that's going to be a non-issue. But there's a lot of challenges to be had. We're trying to solve regular problems, but yeah, we have those challenges as well. So sorry about that.
No, Brian, it's a great observation. Personally, maybe I'm wrong, but personally, in spite of some of the hyper quantum computing, I think quantum computing is a very exciting technology. But I think commercially, we probably won't see it until around 2030, to be honest with you. So, others are of that opinion too, including some experts in the field. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe something happens soon. That, however, taking a step back, we are, with the technologies that we have today, one of the big changes that's going to happen is, on the one hand, as you correctly point out, we have this explosion in data. But the difference is now it's going to be more and more decentralized data, created around the devices around the edge. So absolutely, standards are key, and also how we're going to develop the AI or machine learning that is going to work on the edge, because you get things like GPT3 that was 175 billion parameters, a giant model. Then you have Google make an even bigger one, Google Switch, which didn't get as much publicity, but it's over 1 billion parameters, gigantic, another huge transformer model, 5 to 6 times bigger than GPT3. But these giant models then have to sit on the cloud, and you can't really put them on a mobile, right? Something that big. And if we're going to have more and more things on these mobiles and devices around our households and hospitals and industry, etc., and offices, we need neural compression. We need, and also we got the challenge of data security and privacy. So, for example, one of the challenges in healthcare, where we could see huge benefits from machine learning, is this data privacy challenge. In the US, you have HIPAA. In Europe and the UK, we have GDPR, and other countries have similar privacy legislations. So you can show exciting use cases for healthcare with AI, but essentially to really scale it and make it work and to prove it clinically in a clinical setting, you need more and more data, right? But then you've got the challenge that a lot of that data is siloed across different servers and hospitals, different machines, and you've got patient privacy around that. And it's a similar thing in finance, where regulation is key, etc., and in autonomous cars as well. So where you'd have to have decentralized data on the cars itself and data security. So the big game changers there could be anonymization with homographic encryption, and in particular federated learning with differential privacy, which are going to be huge game changers as they really take off. And then we can start getting around the data privacy with collaborative learning, but without removing the data. So that's the way federated learning would work. You start in the cloud initially with a model, train it, deploy it across, say, decentralized servers, which could be mobiles or hospital servers, as the case may be. They learn from them, and then they go back to the central model without moving the data. But what they're doing, to explain it very simply in layman's terms, they're updating, if you like, the mathematics of the model, the parameters, the weights and the gradients, without removing the data. So I'm explaining it in a very simplistic way. But that allows then for the global model to be updated and redeployed to everyone. So then you get collaborative learning. And that would get around this data privacy challenge that we have today. So hopefully over the next few years, these techniques combined with neural compression, etc., are going to go a long way to helping AI grow on the edge, which is going to be key. And also, when we get more and more AI on the edge, and it's doing real-time interactions, you want AI that can keep on learning and respond to dynamic environments. That's going to be essential if we're going to have autonomous robots, autonomous cars, etc., and real-time interactions in these dynamic environments. So hybrid AI techniques, whether it's neurosymbolic AI or finding ways that we can, enable neural networks to find a way to deal with causality and explainability. Explainability is key as well, because if a car turns left instead of right and it's autonomous, you want to know why it did that. Or if a machine learning algorithm, a deep learning algorithm says this is cancer, and you don't want to go to the patient as a doctor and go, I'm terribly sorry to tell you got cancer. And the patient says, how am I? And you go, I don't know. I mean, the deep neural network said it. I don't know. You got to have explainability, and it's got to handle causal reasoning. So these are big areas of research that are going to come through as well in the next few years. But you're absolutely right. Standards is going to be key as well.
That was my next question, Imtiaz. How did you guess explainable AI? Okay, I did want to hear you. You kind of touched on this, right? So what kind of comfort can we provide to humankind out there that we'll be able to trace some of the steps? Not, of course, what we have in the rule-based systems, but still, some comfort of decisions that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, when you come to areas such as healthcare, and as I mentioned, finance, which has got strict regulations, and in particular since the financial crisis, You don't want to find out you're using a deep learning algorithm that goes and puts it all on one stock, and then it blows up. And we've seen with GameStop the kind of losses that funds can hit with some of those when trades go the wrong direction. So the losses can be large. And we've seen again with the financial crisis the potential to bring down banks. So you don't want that kind of new kind of systematic risk coming through because algorithms go and do the wrong thing. Or just suddenly trigger stop losses systematically everywhere. So effectively, explainability is a key thing in finance, in healthcare, and also in with autonomous cars. Again, if an accident happens, hopefully accidents will be rare, but if they do happen, you need to be able to ask, why did it happen and how can we stop it? And if the deep neural network, you can't figure it out for the deep neural network because it can't explain itself, then it's not, that's a big challenge. So I think there are a number of explainable AI techniques that are emerging. I recall with the convolutional neural network, I forget which, I think it was Duke University or some of the university students were using something called concept whitening to try and show the activations through the network and explain interfaces, etc. But with transformer models, for instance, we've got the attention mechanism, and you can see how it's making decisions. And there are also various interfaces that can be used there to enhance that and improve that. We're also seeing hybrid AI, such as neurosymbolic AI, which combines good old-fashioned AI, symbolic reasoning, logical AI, with deep neural networks. So then you can actually get the AI to explain itself, or can even ask it questions, for instance, when you combine it with a knowledge graph, so you can get some degree of explainability and causal reasoning. So I think these are all very exciting areas. MIT did some work. MIT CSAR with IBM Watson, they have a research lab cooperation together. I think they've been doing a lot of the leading work in neurosymbolic AI. I've been following that quite closely. Had a bit of experimentation on my own with my team on exploring that field too. And I think that is going to be potentially a very exciting area going forwards. So a lot of, I think 2022 to 2025, a lot of convergence, as Brian pointed out, is going to occur. I think huge new opportunities, business opportunities we can't even imagine today are going to come through that.
I love that. That's, again, I get really jazzed about emerging tech and more. I got like a lot of nerds in the tech space, but I wanted to ask you, Imtiaz, we're just real quick, if you want to highlight a couple things, where do you see the most promise in all the work that you, because you're very well versed in your technology, and we appreciate you being here, but where do you see the most promise maybe in the next 2 years on a particular technology?
I believe the game-changing opportunities or game-changing things for us as society and is going to come through the fusion between AI and IoT, the AI IoT. So all the devices around us, as we talked, the edge, etc., that devices go from being dumb to actually being intelligent and responsive to you. Personalization there. So that's going to happen everywhere, whether in your household, in your work environment, etc. These days, of course, house after coronavirus or during coronavirus, home and house, or rather work and home, have often converged together anyway. So it's going to be increasingly on all the things we interact with are going to have more and more capabilities and intelligence. It's going to be things like, I personally believe, smart glasses, 5G enabled smart glasses will be a huge game changer in 2 to 3 years with the likes of Facebook and Google and Apple, etc., and Samsung all bringing their products out, and that it will see the mobile phone kind of like fade away. It will completely replace the mobile phone, and it'll be a more natural interface. I could have these on and be coding on a virtual interface, so I can have it as I want and without all the strain, and have the neural translation there, so language isn't a barrier. So again, it will completely transform social media, marketing, healthcare in ways we can't even imagine right now. Finance too. You could have a virtual pop-up customized bank manager with fusing holographic technology to come and explain to me a particular product. Education, I could have a virtual tutor helping me if I was trying to learn something on maths or a language or something, essay writing. So it's just like a complete new world where our imagination is our limit.
Fantastic, fantastic. I can never stop Imtiaz learning from you because, first of all, I do want to address to our audience, if you're not following Imtiaz on Twitter, you're missing out. You're missing out his wealth of knowledge, wealth of information. So follow Imtiaz, deep learn 007. How easy is that? How clever is that, Imtiaz? Fantastic, fantastic. There are many other questions, Imtiaz, I have for you. So we would need to talk about talent some other time, right? Is it still tight, to make all these changes?
We need massive investment in skills and the education system, both for young people, but also for experienced people. The World Economic Forum had a statistic that by 2025, AI will cost 85 million jobs. That's a lot, but it will also create 97 million. So 12 million net gain. But those jobs, and they're going to be higher paid, better paid jobs, but they need skills. And so we want those jobs. The US wants those jobs and other countries, because then you're going to have people earning more money, more disposable income, paying more tax. It's a win-win for everyone, but it requires investment in the skills. And also we need to make sure not just the young people, but also experienced staff are being given these opportunities to reskill for the future.
Absolutely. You know what? Last week I spoke with Danilo Magheri, who is automation and AI leader in London, and he pointed fantastic, element to it, is that people who are in the job will have to learn about, certain low-code techniques. Okay, so they're not technical, they're business people, but with skills where they can offer solutions without waiting for IT to come over and deploy new processes and new technologies. So this is like convergence. We talked about not just technologies, but also business functions. So to conclude our conversation, Imtiaz, where do you see us human converging in making this brilliant future possible?
As I said, I think with the right investments in skills and talent and infrastructure, we've got huge, exciting possibilities ahead. It's the fourth industrial revolution, right? Which is going to be a huge game changer. We're going to go through change faster than any point in human history. The disruptors will become the disrupted often in this case. It's going to go that fast. So huge wave of new opportunities. History, having a historic brand of 100 years or whatever won't count so much anymore. And we've seen that, for example, in the US and the UK. We've seen big retailers who have 100-year plus histories disappear, right? They couldn't adapt to the digital era. And that kind of pace of change is going to accelerate. So it's going to bring challenges, but it's also going to bring a huge number of exciting new opportunities. And for humans, it's all about being agile. It's about being willing to learn and being agile and seeing the opportunities, staying on top of identifying what are the new opportunities and mapping it out for yourself. I think that's going to be the key thing.
Big promise, big promise. Imtiaz, thank you. Thank you so very much. Amazing talk today. So replays will be available. We will definitely tweet about them. We'll put more, post on LinkedIn so more people can take advantage of your knowledge and wisdom. Thank you, Imtiaz.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you, Imtiaz. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. It's been great.